Unbelievable. The bone-chilling audio that reprograms your mind at 3 a.m. You won't believe it. It was 3 a.m., the witching hour when all things uncanny arise from the shadows. In the quiet town of Eldridge, a spine-tingling legend swirled in hushed whispers. They said that there was an audio recording, a haunting melody that could invade your mind, rewiring it like a deranged puppeteer tugging at invisible strings. If you listened at this bewitching hour, your world would never be the same. A heavy hush lay thick in the air, the only sound being the soft rustle of leaves and the eerie call of an owl that echoed like a ghostly sigh. The first strange thing everyone talked about was the missing persons case that had rocked the town's core. Sarah Klein vanished without a trace mere weeks ago, and locals claimed she had been last seen downtown, earphones in place, lost in what they dubbed the audio of madness. Her brother Greg felt a tight knot in his stomach, wrestling with the weight of his own guilt. He'd warned her not to listen to those cursed sounds. He'd seen what the recording did to people, how it twisted their thoughts until they were mere shadows of themselves. Chills raced down his spine as he recalled the way her eyes had glazed over, consumed by whatever play of sound had entranced her. As the clock ticked ominously, Greg convinced himself it must be a prank, a cruel joke by some twisted soul to lure the unnaturally curious. But was it? A rising tide of murmured speculation gripped Eldridge. Even those who once laughed it off now found it impossible to shake the feeling that they were being watched, that something unspeakable lurked just out of sight. One night at the local diner, a group of teenagers nearly jumped out of their skin at the sudden crash of a plate, thinking it might just be the arrival of the unknown. Eyes darted, breaths held, and panic swept through. They whispered together, sharing stories of odd occurrences, sudden power cuts, and shapes moving in the dark. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But as Eldridge held its collective breath, it became painfully clear that something had happened to Sarah. Something masked in sinister music. That chilling audio was out there somewhere, waiting for the next unknowing victim to slip into its grasp. The tension condensed and dark shadows followed Greg as he stepped out of the diner, determination coursing through him. He had to find out what happened, and at the very least, protect those he loved. The night deepened, the atmosphere thickening like fog, dark and intoxicating. And as he took the first step toward the woods, an unnatural silence enveloped him. What lay ahead? A curious pull tinged with fear twisted in his gut. What secrets awaited him on that solitary path? In that heart-stopping moment, the haunting audio echoed faintly in the distance, inviting him deeper into the shadows. Every step Greg took felt heavier, weighted by dread. The woods, normally a comforting backdrop to his childhood, now transformed into a living nightmare. They loomed large, their branches clawing at the sky, whispering secrets he'd rather not hear. It was as if the very trees had conspired against him, wrapping him in their suffocating embrace. He could hear it now, a low hum threading through the silence, a melody lurking just beyond the edge of his consciousness. The spectral sound wrapped around him, sending ice through his veins. He had to get closer. It was a compulsion that gnawed at him, suggesting that finding Sarah might be just beyond that next twist in the trail. The darkness thickened, swallowing the faintest glimmers of moonlight. Greg stumbled into a clearing, breath hitching as he realized he wasn't alone. Figures flitted in the periphery like wisps of smoke, strangers, or maybe friends, but they wore expressions he couldn't place. They were frozen, entranced. Something had them gripped by invisible chains. Could they hear it too? His heartbeat drummed louder, drowning out the haunting audio that seemed to seep from the very earth beneath his feet. Sarah, he called, voice cracking in the void. No response. Just the melody growing stronger, swirling around him like a predator stalking prey. He felt it tugging, pulling thoughts from his mind like a cruel magician stripping away doubts. Greg pressed forward, his pulse racing with desperate urgency. He had to find her. Suddenly, a flash of movement caught his eye. A pale figure darted between the trees, and Greg's breath caught in his throat. It was her. He recognized the tattered sweatshirt that marked Sarah's last moment of normalcy. "Sarah!" he shouted again, voice now a desperate plea. The rhythm of the woods shifted, accompanied by cruel laughter that chilled him to the bone. Shadows twisted and morphed, seemingly animated by the audio itself, as though it was feeding on Greg's mounting fear. The laughter faded, replaced by an echo that rang through the trees, drawing his attention. It was coming from an old, dilapidated cabin, half hidden behind a screen of foliage. Caution warned him to turn back, to run. But again that unyielding pull wrapped around him, insistent. He approached the cabin, heart pounding, prepared for a confrontation he wasn't sure he could handle. The door hung loosely on its hinges, creaking eerily as he nudged it open. Inside, the room was dark but for the glow of a flickering lamp. Greg hesitated just long enough to catch his breath, then stepped in. The walls were plastered with torn posters, words scribbled in frantic handwriting. "The audio sees you. Don't listen and save your mind." He froze. Someone else had been here, someone who understood the horror of that sound. As he ventured deeper, the murmur returned, mingling with the faint cries of the echoes outside. Greg strained to listen, and then he heard something else. A voice. Not just any voice, but Sarah's. "Help me, you have to stop, it wants us." His stomach twisted, panic clawing at his insides. He was running out of time. In that moment, a deafening crack split the air. The cabin trembled, as should a beast awakening. The windows rattled violently, and all at once, the sound crescendoed, intertwining with her cries. Outside, the shadows danced hungrily. A dark frenzy of limbs and ghastly figures overshadowed the door. Greg fought the urge to flee. He had to confront this nightmare, for Sarah's sake. But then he caught a glimpse at the edge of the woods. An eerie figure stood watching, cloaked in darkness. It was tall and wore a familiar face. Was it Sarah? Or something far worse? As the shadows reached for him, Greg could feel the audio thrumming within him, threatening to consume him whole. Time slipped away like sand between his fingers. What would he sacrifice to save her? As he pondered that chilling thought, the figure smiled, and the cabin began to distort around him. Every sense screamed for him to escape. But would he? With the darkness closing in, the question surged through his mind. Once lost, could he ever return? The cabin twisted further, its walls seeming to breathe. Greg felt the room closing in, the air thick with dread. Shadows writhed, forming grotesque shapes that danced to the rhythm of the relentless hum. He fought against the tightness in his throat, willing himself to take a step forward. "Sarah!" he called again, the sound echoing into the darkness. The flickering lamp cast eerie shadows that flickered like dying spirits. The familiar voice of Sarah cried out, imploring him from just beyond the rancid wood. "Greg, you have to stop it." It filled him, wrapping around his heart like a vice, squeezing until he felt lightheaded. He was losing her. Panic surged, pushing him through the disorienting cabin. "I'm coming," he cried, the fear of failing mixing with something deeper, a dark power swirling just beneath his skin, whispering to him that it could bring her back. But he shook his head. No, he wouldn't listen. He couldn't give in. But the shadows peeked in response, dark tendrils reaching for him, alluring, seducing him with promises of relief from the torment of searching. He gritted his teeth, pressing on towards the cries, sidestepping discolored remnants of memories captured in tattered photographs. Images from a life before horror had taken hold. Cigarettes and whiskey bottles littered the floor, remnants left by the lost soul who left those frantic warnings. Frantic laughter echoed in the distance, haunting and mingling with Sarah's cries, each sound blending into a twisted lullaby. Greg slapped his palms against his ears, blocking out the dark melody even as it began wrapping itself deeper into his mind. Desperation clawed at his feet, urging him to flee back out into the suffocating woods. But where would he go if Sarah was still trapped here? He recalled their last moments in the sun, laughter echoing like a song through the treetops, a stark contrast to the hell he now faced. He couldn't let this force take them both. The cabin trembled again, shaking with an intensity that rattled his bones. At the back, toward the unseen alcove shrouded in gloom, the wall suddenly cracked. From it emerged an obscured figure, twisted and warped, as though it had been forged from shadows themselves. The familiar grin spread wider, revealing glistening teeth that sparkled with malice. "Greg," the figure purred, its voice dripping with horrible sweetness. "You need to join us. Abandon your fears." It stretched a limb toward him, elongated fingers undulating as they reached closer, impossibly inviting. "No," he shouted, squeezing his eyes shut. "I want tea." Suddenly, the musical crescendo morphed into a blood-curdling shriek, clamoring through the cabin like a waterfall of terror. The walls groaned, distorting around him as if the cabin itself was alive. Greg felt his determination waver, every fiber of his being screaming at him to give in, to accept the dark comfort being offered. A part of him longed for it just to let go of the weight and join the shadows. The shadows responded, swirling violently, drawing tight around him as the floor and the walls began to morph into a whirlwind of bright and terrible colors. The phosphorescent glow mocked him, the creature in front of him provoking him to look once more. And then he heard Sarah's voice again, cut through the chaos like a knife. "You can't let it win. Please fight. Sarah, I'm coming," he roared, summoning his last reserves of strength. He wrenched himself from the seduction of the shadows, taking a blind leap towards the alcove that housed the source of the sound, the light dimming and darkening with every moment lost. But was he too late? Had he already handed over his mind? The cabin pulsed around him, grasping him in an icy embrace. One last chance, but to what end? Just as he lunged, the ground gave way beneath him, and the world fell away into darkness, pulling him into the depths. In that split second, the question rang clear. Did he dare trust what lay below? Would he be able to find Sarah or lose himself forever? The realization of his choice hung heavy in the air, and he plunged into the void. What awaited him on the other side? Greg fell into the darkness, weightless for a moment, as if suspended in an endless abyss. The sensation was disorienting, the silence deafening. He reached out, grasping at the void, but there was nothing to hold on to. A tight knot formed in his stomach, an instinctual fear gnawing at him. Where was Sarah? As if in response to his frantic thoughts, a flicker of light began to emerge. It shimmered just ahead, beckoning him like a lighthouse in a storm. He could almost hear her voice again, softer now, drifting like a whisper through the darkness. He pushed his limbs to propel himself forward, moving through the darkness as if swimming against the tide. With every thrust, the echo of that sinister laughter returned, wrapping around him like a vine, taunting him. He could feel the shadows drawing close, the cold tendrils coiling around him, urging him to surrender to their grasp. "No, not now," he shouted, fighting against their pull. His heart pounded like a drum. The light grew closer, pulsating with an otherworldly energy that surged through him. Igniting a spark of hope with a final desperate push, he broke through the veil. He stumbled into a wide expanse, illuminated by the eerie glow that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. It felt alive, the air thick with an ancient power, frigid yet crackling with energy. Everything felt wrong here. The walls seemed to breathe just like in the cabin, but the reality around him shimmered like a mirage. And there she was across the room. Sarah stood rooted, her silhouette bathed in the unnatural light. Relief washed over him, but it was clouded by dread. Something hovered behind her, shadowed and monstrous, writhing with a grotesque hunger. "Sarah!" he yelled, taking a step forward, but his feet sank into a layer of deep, shifting darkness beneath him. Panic surged as it tightened around his ankles, threatening to pull him down again. "Don't!" she cried, her voice trembling. "Stay back. It's okay, I'm here," he shouted, straining against whatever held him, willing his body to break free. He wouldn't lose her again. "Fight it. You have to fight." But as he watched, a ripple of shadow coiled around her, wrapping her in a shroud. Her face twisted in pain, the look of desperation carving deeper into his heart. The creature behind her began to manifest, shaped by the essence of the cabin's darkness, revealing features that were hauntingly familiar, morphed reflections of himself and Sarah. "Do you see?" it whispered, its voice a chilling symphony of their past. "What you once were. What you could still be." Greg felt himself wavering. Memories flooded back, moments of laughter, of love, of a life they had built together. But they were tainted now, turning twisted in the creature's mouth like a litany of sins. "No, I won't let you take her," he roared, channeling everything he had into one last push. With a surge of determination, he tore his feet free from the darkness that threatened to consume him, sprinting toward Sarah. But as he reached for her, the shadows roared like an angry beast shielding its prey. Greg halted, the air thickening around him, his heart racing uncontrollably. "Greg!" Sarah screamed, reaching out for him as the creature seized her wrist, pulling her back into its shadowy embrace. "No!" he cried, a primal scream escaping his lips. Time stood still as he panted, helpless to stop the encroaching darkness. The shadow figure loomed larger, the weight of its presence suffocating him as he fought against terror. He had crossed a line. To save her, he must delve deeper into the shadows, into the very darkness they once escaped. Could he turn back? With the sound of Sarah's cries echoing in his ears, Greg made a choice. He would take on the darkness to bring her back, but was he strong enough to confront the deepest fears of his own heart? The air thickened with anticipation. The shadow's laughter echoed louder. What lay in wait for him, and could love truly conquer the terror they faced together? The shadows twisted around Greg, tightening their grip like a vice. With every strained breath he felt their suffocating weight, and still, he pushed forward, fighting against a tide of dread. His eyes remained locked on Sarah, who was slowly being yanked deeper into the abyss. The creature behind her seemed to breathe as if it were fed by the despair that soaked the room. "Greg." Her voice was a mixture of fear and desperation. "I won't let it take you," he shouted, every ounce of conviction propelling him forward despite the fear coursing through his veins. The memory of her laughter, the warmth in her eyes, those fleeting images pushed him against the darkness surrounding them. As he moved, Greg's panic transformed into raw energy, heightening every sense. He could hear the whispers of the shadows, hear the echo of his own heartbeat pounding against the silence. It seemed almost alive, weaving between the layers of his thoughts. "You can't save her, you doomed her the day you stepped into the cabin." "No," he yelled, shaking his head. "It's a lie." The shadows laughed, a cacophony of voices that felt both familiar and foreign. They mocked him, replaying moments of weakness, regret, the times he had let Sarah down. It twisted inside him, a fury igniting against the darkness. He had to break through. The only way past it was through the pain. But the weight of the creature loomed endlessly behind Sarah, always a heartbeat away. Greg took another step, fighting against the blackness that surged like a tide around him. "Sarah," he called, reaching his hand out as far as he could. "Remember our promise? We'd always find each other." The creature snarled, shadows writhing like smoke around it, and he felt its presence ripple through him, trying to infect his mind with fear. "She is already lost to you," it hissed, its voice an echo of their past, a reflection of every argument, every lost moment. "You can't save her now." With a roar of defiance, Greg plunged deeper into the sea of darkness. Determination reflected in Sarah's eyes as he fought to reach her, feeling the warm glow of their shared memories pushing against the cold coils of the creature. "We are stronger together," he yelled, invoking the shared dreams and promises that once lit their path. Suddenly, a brilliant spark erupted between them. The shadows shrieked, recoiling as though burned. The connection grew, light fueling his resolve, illuminating their shared love in stark contrast to the consuming dark. It surged like a spark, igniting the tender hope hidden deep within. "Sarah, hold on." His voice was a beacon, wrapping around her like a lifeline. The creature's hold faltered, momentarily distracted by the growing light. It shrieked, a sound that burned and pierced through, created by all the pain it had harbored. Time twisted once more. Greg surged forward, and in that moment everything slowed. But just as he reached for her hand, the creature retaliated with a forceful surge, grabbing not just Sarah, but the remnants of their love with overwhelming finality. A curtain of darkness fell, sharper and more vicious than before. Greg felt his heart plummet. "No," he screamed, clawing at the cruel void, but it swallowed Sarah back into its depths. The creature loomed over him, larger than life, a shadow of fear that mirrored his own human flaws. Greg staggered back, blinking against the overwhelming blackness, fighting the urge to collapse under despair. "Greg." Sarah's voice floated as an echo, barely audible, like a ghost outside his grasp. A new thought struck him, an idea steeped in desperation. What if the only way to fight this darkness was to embrace it? Was that the truth, or only another lie spun by the darkness? The shadows stirred and focused upon him, inquisitive and hungry, ripe with an insatiable pull. Could he dive deeper, face the darkness that had haunted him? The darkness danced around him, whispering promises that twisted in the air. What if Greg hesitated, but the shadows pressed in? The silence that followed was a heavy weight, pregnant with unspoken threats. Do you accept? It beckoned tauntingly. His heart thundered in his chest, an alarm bell signaling both terror and an exhilarating possibility. Could he confront what lay hidden? As shadows coiled around him waiting for his answer, the true battle loomed ahead. What revelation awaited him in embracing the dark? Would it lead him to Sarah, or was it a descent into madness? Greg's breath hitched in his throat as the darkness engulfed him, the shadows closing in tighter than ever. A part of him screamed to retreat, to run away from the taunts echoing around him. Yet another, braver part urged him to lean into the darkness, to confront the fear head-on. Did he even have a choice? The creature that had seized Sarah was now looming larger than life, each heartbeat synchronized with his growing desperation. I accept. His voice burst forth raw and defiant. The shadows pulsed, a wave of power swirling around him, as if responding to his declaration. In that moment, Greg felt an electric surge coursing through his veins, lifting him from despair. Light flickered at his fingertips, illuminating fragments of memories buried deep within a childhood fight with fear, moments of laughter shared with Sarah, and the soft promises exchanged beneath the stars. Face it, the creature rumbled, its voice a low growl that smothered all warmth. The darkness is also a part of you. He felt it then, a gnawing truth lingering just beneath the surface of his consciousness. All those cracks in their foundation, every insecurity and doubt he had avoided. He took a shaky step forward, shadows warping around him like malleable clay. Show me, Greg exclaimed, lifting his chin in defiance, ready to embrace every fragment of his failure. Suddenly, scenes flickered into existence, his past flashed through him like a strobe light. The echoes of their arguments, the way he had let fear dictate his actions, the moments he had chosen not to fight for Sarah. Each image was like a dagger, sharp and piercing, but with each heart-wrenching vision, he felt a corresponding wave of understanding wash over him. The creature's howling laughter crescendoed, attempting to drown out his awakening. You think you can conquer this? You are powerless. It lunged, shadowy claws extending toward him, but Greg stood firm. No, he shouted, determination igniting within him. I have the strength to face this. With a surge of courage, Greg plunged into the deepest recesses of his mind, refusing to turn away from the terror that lay there. He embraced the sorrow and regret, transforming them into resolved courage. He thought of Sarah, her light, the promise of their future. As he anchored himself to her memory, warmth spread through him like wildfire, burning away the shadows. In that instant he felt the chains binding him crack. The shadows howled louder, as if fleeing from the light pouring from within him. Sarah! He roared once more, the name echoing through the abyss. I will find you! And at that moment, a gleaming doorway opened up in the midst of the swirling darkness. Hope blossomed like a flower piercing through concrete. Greg bolted toward it, heart pounding wildly in his chest, a faint whisper of Sarah guiding him. But just as he reached the edge, an unseen force wrapped around his ankle like an iron claw, dragging him back down. No! Not again! His thoughts screamed, every fiber of his being protesting as he fought against the invisible chains. The darkness took form behind him, pulsing with raw power, ready to reclaim what it believed was rightfully its. Sarah's voice whispered again, a ghostly echo, but this time it contained a flicker of urgency. You must choose before it's too late. In that critical moment, Greg's heart raced against the terror. Who would he become if he let the darkness consume him? What path lay beyond the doorway? The answer loomed before him, heavy with uncertainty. As the shadows closed in once more, would he dare to choose? Would he risk it all for the chance to rescue Sarah? With every ounce of strength, Greg thrashed against the grip tightening around his ankle. The chill of the shadows seeped into his skin, each pulse of darkness threatening to drag him under. Panic surged, but alongside it was a flicker of resolve. Not like this, he roared, forcing every ounce of emotion into his voice. I won't let you take me again. Desperation fueled him as he pulled against the invisible chains. He pictured Sarah, the warmth of her laughter and the way her eyes sparkled with mischief. She was out there waiting for him. Greg had to believe that. He felt the chains beginning to loosen, the grip on his ankle faltering. Let go of me, he shouted, the words slicing through the suffocating darkness. With one final ferocious tug, Greg broke free, stumbling forward into the doorway shimmering just beyond reach. The shadows screeched as he made a mad dash, diving into the light, his body colliding with the threshold. And the world swallowed him whole. The shift was immediate. No longer in the grasp of shadows, he rolled onto a sunlit ground, the brightness suffusing him with warmth. Greg took a deep breath, air flooding his lungs rich and earthy. He looked around, the sudden clarity overwhelming. Where am I? His voice echoed in the serene landscape. The chilling weight of the dark world behind him felt like a distant nightmare. This place was vibrant, alive with color, and the scent of wildflowers filled the air. But something felt off. Where was the comfort in it? A shiver ran down his spine. His heart raced at the sound of Sarah's voice. It floated from somewhere beyond the sunlit glade. But it wasn't clear, and it seemed to drift through the air like a ghost seeking solace. Sarah! He called out, desperation clawing at him. Where are you? Silence responded, the peaceful atmosphere amplifying his growing anxiety. That brief moment of freedom felt fleeting like a mirage. Then, at the far edge of the clearing, shadows flickered like disturbed water. He squinted, trying to make sense of the shifting forms that coalesced into a familiar structure, a small cabin, its dilapidated wooden walls drenched in darkness, contrasting sharply against the vibrant landscape. Don't go near it, a new voice warned, echoing inside his mind. It was deep and rough like gravel scraping against stone. It sent an icy tremor down his spine. Why? Greg demanded, his fists clenching. What's wrong with that place? You can't trust what you find inside, the voice urged, an unsettling urgency. The darkness still seeks something. The cabin loomed larger before him, shadows curling around the edges of the door, reaching out like fingers hungry for prey. Did he dare step inside? Was Sarah waiting there? Or was it a trap disguised in light and hope? Greg, you have to make a choice. The voice persisted, layering his uncertainty with dread. With tension crackling in the air, he took a step toward the cabin, heart hammering. Would he find Sarah behind that door? Or the darkness that could consume them both? The moment hung in the balance, filled with perilous possibilities as he reached for the handle, adrenaline surging like wildfire. But just as his fingers brushed against the worn wood, another voice broke through the silence, this one sharp and wild, crackling like electricity. Turn back, Greg. It's a trap. Would he listen? Would he open the door and face what lay within? Or would he heed the warning, perhaps sealing Sarah's fate? The choice was his, heavy and suffocating as shadows danced around him once more. Greg hesitated, heart pounding. Two competing voices echoed in his mind, battling for control. He cursed the shadows creeping in around him, suffocating his instincts. Fear gnawed at his resolve, making him question everything. Which voice could he trust? He had to make a decision, and fast. The handle felt cold under his fingers, almost alive. He inhaled sharply, recalling Sarah's smile, her warmth. Whatever awaited him behind that door had to be worth the risk. He glanced back at the glade, longing for the light of safety. She needs me, he whispered. Don't do it. The gravelly voice urged, sharper now. You're walking into darkness. You're still in danger. Greg gritted his teeth against the growing dread. Just as he was about to turn away, the door swung open with a creak that echoed like the tolling of a bell. A swirl of shadows poured out, thick and heavy, wrapping around his feet. They beckoned him into the unknown. Greg. Sarah's voice was clearer now, a haunting melody laced with urgency. I'm in here. Sarah. He shouted, a mixture of hope and fear lacing his words. The shadows responded, shifting and swirling like a living entity. They whispered promises and threats, a siren song that echoed in his mind. Without thinking, Greg took a step forward and then another. The shadows retreated slightly, as if assessing his resolve. The cabin's interior was darker than he imagined, yet hints of flickering candlelight illuminated the edges of the room. Greg, hurry. Sarah's voice cut through the dark, pulling him closer. You can save us. With a rush of adrenaline, he crossed the threshold, feeling the threshold shift beneath him like quicksand. Just inside, he could see what appeared to be a figure, a silhouette against the flickering candlelight, a shape that morphed into a painful reminder of his fears. Stay away from her. He screamed, feeling the shadows grasp at him, tugging with icy tendrils. Dark shapes danced around him, dismissing his confrontation. "She's not yours to take." Laughter erupted from somewhere within, chilling Greg to the bone. It twisted around the cabin like a cruel wind. "Foolish boy," a voice hissed from the darkness laced with malice. "You think you can save her?" The figure stepped into the light, revealing a face distorted yet eerily familiar. It was a twisted reflection of himself, eyes filled with rage and madness that promised torment. Panic surged anew, pulsing through his veins like ice. "Look at you, still the same," the figure sneered, advancing. "Desperate and alone, chasing ghosts. What makes you think she'd want you?" "Shut up," he shouted, galvanizing his strength. "I would do anything for her." The mockery only fueled his rage, a sharp fury igniting something deep within him. He squared his shoulders, ready to confront his dark past. "I won't let you win." With a surge of determination, he lunged forward, ready to face the darkness. He could feel the air crackling around him, charged with raw energy. But as he approached, the shadows whipped around, threatening to engulf him. "Greg, please. We're running out of time." Sarah's voice echoed again, more desperate now. Confusion twisted his stomach. Was this the truth? Was he truly running out of time, or was it another trick? He couldn't turn back. He had to find her. In a flash of resolve, Greg charged at the ominous figure, the shadows howling in defiance. But as he reached for his doppelganger, a piercing shriek filled the air, sending a shockwave through his body. Suddenly, everything went dark. Would he lose Sarah forever? Would the shadows claim him once again? Only silence remained, a deafening, oppressive silence that threatened to consume him whole. A chill snaked down Greg's spine as darkness wrapped around him like a vice, squeezing the breath from his lungs. He struggled against the void, heart racing, thoughts spiraling. The silence was a weight pressing down, reminding him of everything he stood to lose. "Sarah!" He shouted into the void, but his words felt small, almost crushed by the oppressive dark. "I won't leave you." From the depths of the blackness, a flicker sparked in his mind. Her laughter, her eyes shining with joy. It was a memory, a beacon of light. "Hold on," he added, though he wasn't sure who he was trying to comfort, her or himself. Suddenly, the silence split, shattering like glass. A cacophony of voices erupted, shouting, murmuring, crying out in desperation. They were angry, terrified, pleading with him to listen, but their words melded into an indistinct roar that set his nerves aflame. "No! Stop it!" he shouted, and just like that, the torrent of sound ceased. A profound stillness returned, only to be disrupted by a soft whimper in the corner of the void. Greg, the voice was faint but unmistakable. Greg strained into the shadows, summoning every shred of strength left within him. "Sarah!" he rasped. The call traveled through the emptiness, seeking her out like a thread binding them together. The darkness shifted, swirling violently, and with it came the echoes of his own dread. "Too late," hissed his shadowy twin, re-emerging with cruel delight. "You will never reach her in time. Get away from me." Greg fought against the force threatening to pull him down. His fists clenched, he thought of Sarah, her smile, their moments together, the dream of a future. Those memories became an anchor, rooting him against the tide of despair. "Do you believe she can survive this?" The dark figure sneered, its form morphing like smoke. "You're a broken man. She's just a fantasy drifting further away." "No," Greg shouted, pouring every ounce of conviction into his voice. "I refuse to let you destroy her." The shadows writhed in response, coiling tighter around him, but he pressed forward undeterred. With a single step, fueled by sheer will, he took hold of a foreign energy swirling within. Every ounce of fear morphed into resolve as he drew upon it, channeling it into a point of light. "Sarah!" he cried, his voice booming through the dark. The shadows recoiled, flickering as if stung by his resolve. They hesitated, momentarily retreating. And then, in the heart of darkness, a light flickered, soft at first, then growing brighter. Greg, the plea was clearer now, merging with that flicker of light. "Hold on. I'm coming." With that, Greg lunged toward the light. Shadows shrieked in outrage, clawing at him as he propelled through the thick mist. Each step felt like a struggle against a fierce wind, but he could not relent. Not now. As the light enveloped him, warmth flooded his senses. The figure caught off guard by his sudden determination shrank back, powerless against the brightness. But just as he could reach out for the light, a jagged wave of shadow grasped his ankle, pulling him back down into the abyss. "You can't escape me. You belong here." Greg's heart raced as he fought against the pull. Hope and horror battled within him. Could he truly save Sarah? Or would they both be lost to the darkness? Desperation clawed at him. He twisted, ready to face the shadows one last time, searching for that familiar voice. "I won't let you take her." And then everything collapsed again. A flash, a blinding burst of light followed by a deafening crash. The ground beneath him buckled and Greg felt himself being torn apart in a kaleidoscope of colors and shadows. The last thing he heard was Sarah's scream, echoing in both hope and despair. When the chaos subsided, all that was left was another suffocating silence, but this time tinged with an unsettling chill, and a new question bloomed in his mind. What was the cost of his resolve? What had he unleashed? Greg awoke to a dimly lit room, the air thick with an oppressive silence. He felt disoriented, like he had just emerged from a tempest of darkness. As he sat up, memories flooded back: the frantic chase through shadows, Sarah's voice piercing through the chaos, the confrontation with the twisted reflection of himself. But where was Sarah now? Panic squeezed his chest, and he took a deep, shuddering breath. He swung his legs over the edge of the bed and planted his feet firmly on the cold, wooden floor. The room was unfamiliar, decorated with peeling wallpaper, and a single flickering candle casting grotesque shadows that danced across the walls. Fear ignited inside him. Was this another trap? "Sarah!" he called, his voice trembling. The silence that followed echoed like a void, unsettling and cruel. Suddenly, a gentle knock on the door broke the stillness. Greg's heart raced. "Sarah?" he whispered, his voice strained with desperation. "Greg." It was her voice, softer now, more like a melody than a call. Her presence slipped through the cracks of his memory, anchoring him to a sense of hope amidst despair. The door creaked open, and there she stood, disheveled yet undeniably real. Relief and terror coiled tightly in his chest as he lunged forward, wrapping his arms around her. Her warmth ignited a flame of courage, washing away his fears. "I thought I lost you," he murmured into her hair. The essence of her heartbeat thudded like the sun, illuminating the darkness they had just fought against. "I'm here," she whispered, pulling back to meet his gaze. But confusion flickered in her eyes, overshadowed by uncertainty. "But we need to leave now." Greg nodded, instinctively sensing the urgency. They stepped cautiously through the door and emerged into a landscape shrouded in thick fog. It felt alive, watchful, breathing, as if the land itself held its breath, waiting for something to stir. "Where are we?" he asked, scanning the horizon for signs of danger. "I don't know," Sarah responded, her voice low and shaky, "but I felt it pulling me back. The audio, it's still out there. It wants us." The air grew heavy at her words, the sensation of being engulfed by shadows returning. Fear crawled back up Greg's spine. He squeezed her hand tighter, a silent vow to keep her safe no matter the cost. As they walked forward, memories of their ordeal flickered in fragments: screams, shadows, laughter mixed with terror. A weight settled over Greg. "We have to confront the darkness, don't we?" "Yes," Sarah admitted, her gaze hardening. "We have to destroy it together." With that, they pressed on, their footsteps echoing in the enveloping mist. Suddenly, the fog started to clear, revealing a dark silhouette before them: the cabin. "It's the same one," Greg whispered, dread clawing at his heart. "The one from before." "The shadows are strong here," Sarah said, her eyes darting nervously. "But we can't let fear guide us." Hand in hand, they stepped slowly towards the door, hearts pounding in unison. The air around them crackled with the echoes of their past. The cabin loomed larger, shadows pirouetting like banshees, hungry and relentless. "Remember," Greg urged, voice firm. "We fight together." As they entered, the temperature plummeted. The familiar pressure of the audio pulsed from the walls, reverberating like a heartbeat, an ominous promise wrapped in dark whispers. Shadows writhed, reaching for them, but Greg and Sarah stood firm. "Now!" Greg shouted. With all their strength, they combined their willpower, creating a shimmering light that pushed against the suffocating darkness. A roar of rage erupted from the shadows, echoes of torment and despair overlapping with their defiance. "You can't win," the dark figure hissed, advancing with malevolent fury. "We will," Greg declared. "You have no power here." The shadows seemed to sway, hesitating for a moment. Seizing the opportunity, Greg summoned everything within him and shouted, "Together we drive you away." Light erupted between them, bright and powerful, illuminating the shadows that fought to consume them. The echoes of laughter, cries, and desperate pleas swirled into a cacophony. But now it was bright against dullness, engulfed into a resonating symphony that echoed their love, their bond. "Feel our strength," Sarah cried. As their light expanded, chasing the darkness to the edges, the walls began to vibrate, shaking with every heartbeat of defiance. Then, with one final surge, the shadows shrieked and pulled away, unraveling like wisps of smoke, leaving them bathed in warm light. The cabin shuddered violently before collapsing into itself, and where it once stood, a brilliant garden bloomed, filled with vibrant colors and wildflowers. "What just happened?" Greg gasped, still holding on to Sarah, feeling the echoes of his heart settle. "We faced the darkness," she replied softly, tears shimmering in her eyes, "and found our light." In that moment he understood. They had not just fought the darkness, they had reclaimed their minds and hearts. Their hairs prickled with relief, as their surroundings transformed, reminding them of everything they had fought for: each other. The sun broke through, bathing them in golden light. They had emerged victorious at last, hand in hand, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead together. And as they stood amidst a field of blooming hope, the final warm whisper of the fading shadows darted away, unseen but not forgotten, leaving behind the eerie promise of freedom, tinged with the lessons of their struggles. This was their farewell to the darkness, a new beginning stretching out like the horizon before them, filled with the vibrant hues of life they would now share. As they took steps forward, Greg took one last look at the remnants, reminding himself of the shadows they had conquered. With Sarah beside him, he felt invincible. Now is the time to move forward, and if you love this conclusion and want more stories that capture your imagination, you need to subscribe to the channel immediately. Don't miss out on the next incredible journey we'll embark on together. Hit that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Let us keep this community growing. And don't wait even one more second to share this story with at least 5 friends who need this final chapter. Let them know their journey is far from over. And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Your voice matters here. Tell us what you think.